Quick disclaimer before we begin. Our content is for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice, did you know? Top scientists measured exactly how much progress was made, documenting a specific drop in time to exhaustion from 29.2 minutes to 26.7 minutes in 10 trained athletes after they used EMS during a brutal cycling test.
It is quite a staggering drop when you look at the raw data.
Right, it really is. So I want you to keep 3 specific questions in the back of your mind as we go through this deep dive today. First, how can reaching exhaustion faster actually be a massive training victory? Second, why did the muscles scream while their heart rates barely noticed? And third, what does this mean for you whether you are a competitive cyclist or just someone trying to maximize your athletic potential?
Yeah, those are exactly the right questions to frame this. We're looking at a physiological puzzle today.
For sure. To really understand why this matters, imagine you are grinding up a steep hill on your bike.
Oh yeah, we all know that brutal feeling.
You are pushing hard, because you want to force your leg muscles to adapt. You want them to grow stronger and build that deep endurance.
Right, you're chasing that adaptation.
Exactly. But almost inevitably, before your legs reach their true metabolic limit, your lungs are absolutely burning. Your heart is just pounding out of your chest.
Yep, the cardiovascular system hits the brakes before your muscles actually get the full message.
Right. So what if you could flip that script? What if you could push the muscles into deep metabolic work without putting extra stress on your heart?
Well, that premise is the core of the research we're unpacking today. We're looking at a foundational study published in 2012 in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and this was conducted by a team of heavy hitters, Wahl, Bloch, Kleinuter, Mester, and others over at the German Sport University Cologne.
Which is, a globally recognized powerhouse for sports science.
Absolutely.
Hmm?
And the subjects they chose make this particularly compelling.
Right, because they didn't just grab a few people off the couch to see if this works on beginners, right?
Far from it. They recruited 10 healthy, highly trained men. These were physical education students who regularly played demanding sports, like soccer and handball.
Okay, so they were fit.
Very fit. Their average age was about 24 and a half, but the metric that really stands out is their average VO2 max, which sat at 54.1.
Wow. Just to put that in perspective for anyone listening, that number indicates a very solid, respectable aerobic capacity.
Yeah, it really does.
These are fit individuals whose bodies are already highly adapted to exertion. We aren't looking at newbie gains where, any minor stimulus causes a massive improvement.
Exactly. The baseline fitness of the subjects forces us to really take the data seriously.
So what was the actual protocol? What did they have them do?
Well, the researchers had these athletes perform 3 separate, incredibly demanding step tests on a cycle ergometer.
Okay.
The directive was simple but brutal: ride until you physically cannot turn the pedals anymore.
Volitional exhaustion.
You got it. So the protocol started at an easy 100 watts for 5 minutes, and then the resistance ramped up by 40 watts every single 5-minute step.
Man, which gets very heavy, very fast. Adding 40 watts every 5 minutes means you hit a wall of resistance pretty quickly.
Oh, the physical load ramps up exponentially. Now, the variable here was the application of stimulation.
Right, the EMS.
Yeah. One ride was a normal control ride with no external intervention. Then on the second ride, they applied a 30 hertz stimulation to the leg muscles.
Okay,
And on the third ride, they pushed it up to an 85 hertz stimulation.
gotcha.
And to achieve this, the researchers utilized modern wireless pad-based systems placed carefully on the thighs, calves, and glutes.
To hit the major driving muscles.
Exactly.
Right, which makes total sense.
Mm-hmm.
This is why a muscle stimulator enhanced with EMS technology, like the one from OREMS DOT Fit, is observed to be so fascinating for today's athletes. It applies the science directly.
It really does. It bridges the gap between the laboratory and the athlete perfectly.
So what were they tracking during all this?
Everything. We are talking breath-by-breath oxygen analysis, heart rate monitored every 5 seconds, and blood samples taken from the earlobe.
Ouch, every 5 minutes.
Yeah, right at the end of every step to track lactate and complex blood gases.
Okay, let's get into the physiological responses because I know there's a major discrepancy here between what the heart was doing and what the muscles were doing.
It is wild. The data on the cardiovascular system is arguably the most surprising starting point.
How so?
Across all 3 of these grueling rides, the normal, the 30 hertz, and the 85 hertz, The heart rates of the athletes were completely identical at every stage.
Wait, identical?
Identical. The cardiovascular attacks simply did not change regardless of the electrical stimulation being applied to the legs.
So the central engine, the heart, thinks everything is completely normal. It's just ticking along as if it's a standard training ride.
Exactly.
But if the heart isn't working harder, what on earth is happening locally down in the muscle tissue?
Down in the muscle tissue, it was a completely different story. Once the athletes reached 75% of their peak power output and continued to climb, their blood lactate levels were significantly elevated during the stimulated rides.
Let's break that down for a second because lactate often gets misunderstood as just this fatigue toxin.
Right, it gets a bad rap.
If their lactate is spiking, that means their muscles are suddenly shifting heavily into anaerobic metabolism, right? Like they are burning fuel without oxygen.
And that is the core mechanism at
Yeah.
play, yeah. They are relying heavily on anaerobic glycolysis.
Okay.
When muscles work at an incredibly high intensity, they require energy faster than the cardiovascular system can deliver oxygen. So the fast-twitch fibers start rapidly burning glucose without oxygen.
And the exhaust from that is lactate.
Precisely. The byproduct is lactate.
But the body usually has a way of dealing with that exhaust before it overflows into the blood, doesn't it?
I think the paper mentioned something called the cell-to-cell lactate shuttle theory. Ah, yes. The lactate shuttle theory is vital here. Lactate is not just waste. It is actually a highly efficient fuel.
Wait, it's a fuel.
Yeah, at lower intensities, the extra lactate produced is shuttled over to neighboring slow-twitch fibers, or even to the heart and liver, where it's burned as fuel.
Oh, wow. So the body is effectively recycling its own exhaust.
Exactly. That is why you don't see lactate spiking in the blood during the early, easy stages of the ride.
Okay, so the recycling plant is keeping up with the exhaust, but once they hit that 75% threshold during the stimulated rides, what happens? Does the plant just get overwhelmed?
It gets completely overrun. The surrounding tissues simply cannot keep up with the sheer volume of lactate being produced locally in the legs.
Yeah.
That localized muscular effort just spills over, flooding the bloodstream with lactate, which is exactly what they measured in those earlobe samples.
If the muscles are drowning in all that exhaust and dumping it into the bloodstream, the blood itself has to be getting highly acidic, right? Does the body try to neutralize that acidity, like, I don't know, pouring baking soda onto vinegar?
That is actually a highly accurate way to visualize it.
Yeah.
The researchers tracked the acid-base markers in the blood, and the data showed a massive systemic effort to buffer that localized acid.
Using what?
Bicarbonate. Your blood contains bicarbonate, which acts exactly like that baking soda. During the stimulated rides, those acid-base markers absolutely crashed.
Because the body was using it all up.
Right. Bicarbonate concentrations plummeted as the body rapidly consumed it to neutralize the acid.
Wow. I also saw a metric in there called PCO₂.
Yes, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide.
Right. Why would carbon dioxide levels drop if the muscles are working so hard? Shouldn't they be producing more CO2?
It seems counterintuitive, I know.
Yeah.
But it comes back to the buffering process. When bicarbonate neutralizes the acid, the chemical reaction actually produces extra carbon dioxide.
Okay, so CO2 goes up.
Initially, yes. But your brain senses that rising CO2 and immediately forces you to breathe heavier and faster to blow it off.
Hyperventilation.
Exactly. Because the athletes were hyperventilating to clear the exhaust, the actual measurable PCO2 dissolved in their blood dropped significantly compared to the normal ride.
That is fascinating.
A metric called base excess also fell much further. The local muscle environment was just undergoing this massive metabolic perturbation.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's like putting a sports car engine your muscles into high gear, but the dashboard tachometer, your heart rate, thinks you're just cruising. The muscles are drowning in metabolic work, but the heart isn't paying the extra tax.
The central cardiovascular system was cruising, but the local muscle environment was redlining.
But wait, hold on. Is this too good to be true? I mean, are we just artificially fatiguing the muscles without actually giving them a real beneficial training stimulus?
That's a fair point.
Right, because bypassing the brain's natural safety limits sounds kind of dangerous. Aren't we just breaking the machine, not training it?
Good question. Let's look at the study design and the underlying physiology. We need to talk about Henneman's size principle of muscle recruitment.
The size principle. Break that down for us. How does my brain normally recruit muscle fibers when I'm, say, just pedaling down the street?
Under normal conditions, your brain is incredibly efficient and highly conservative.
It wants to save energy.
Exactly. When you are cycling at moderate intensities, your brain assigns the work exclusively to your smallest motor units first. These are your flow-twitch muscle fibers.
The ones that can go all day.
Right. They use oxygen efficiently, and they don't produce much lactate. Your brain deliberately saves the larger, fast-twitch motor units for absolute maximum efforts.
Like a suddy sprint.
Yeah, or lifting a massive weight.
So it's a survival mechanism. You only recruit the heavy hitters when you absolutely have to.
Spot on. But the electrical stimulation fundamentally overrides this physiological recruitment order.
How so?
It recruits motor units in a non-selective, spatially fixed, and temporally synchronous pattern.
Meaning it activates both the slow twitch and the fast twitch fibers simultaneously.
Yes. Right from the first pedal stroke,
Right.
you are bypassing the body's natural conservative recruitment order.
Oh, wow.
You are forcing the fast-twitch fibers, which usually produce all that lactate we talked about, to fire continuously at lower cardiovascular workloads.
So normally, to wake up those fast twitch fibers, I'd have to be sprinting so violently that my heart would be at its absolute max. And I could only hold that for, 20 seconds?
It's that.
But here, the stimulation is forcing those specific fibers to do deep, exhaustive work while the heart is just ticking along at an endurance pace.
By recruiting so many fibers simultaneously, you induce a massive metabolic shift locally in the tissue.
Which brings us to the practical application. How can different athletes actually use this decoupling of the heart and the muscles?
Let's start with the classic endurance athlete.
Right, the person putting in 10 to 15 hours a week on the saddle.
For them, this represents a completely new way to manage training load. Think about a scheduled recovery day.
Normally, you have to keep the intensity super low to protect your central nervous system.
Exactly. But with this targeted stimulation, you can add a potent, localized metabolic stimulus directly to the leg muscles without overstressing your central nervous system or your heart.
You get the muscle adaptation of a brutal interval session, but the central fatigue of a light spin.
It is a massive tool for breaking through plateaus.
What about the other end of the spectrum, like people in rehab or athletes who physically cannot hit high workloads due to an injury?
For those managing limitations, this approach can maintain critical fitness. If you have a joint issue that prevents you from pushing massive watts, your muscles will normally atrophy.
Because they aren't getting the stimulus.
Right. But this research demonstrates that you can artificially induce the deep metabolic changes necessary for muscle adaptation at much lower overall physical workloads.
You can maintain aerobic capacity in the muscle itself without loading the joints.
Exactly. But we do have to talk about the biological cost.
Right, because if you are forcing fast twitch fibers to fire continuously, you can't just do this every single day.
You certainly cannot. The researchers tracked an enzyme called creatine kinase, or CK, to prove just how demanding this is.
Creatine kinase, that's a primary indicator of muscle damage, right? Like when you run downhill and get micro tears, CK leaks into the blood.
It is the standard clinical marker of microtrauma. They measured the athlete's CK levels 24 hours after each ride.
And what did they find?
After the normal ride and the 30 hertz ride, the increases were small, standard for a tough workout. But 24 hours after the 85 hertz ride, the CK levels spiked.
How high?
Some subjects saw their levels spike by over 3,000 units.
3,000 units, that is substantial. That indicates a profound level of muscular disruption.
It proves this intervention is highly demanding on the skeletal muscle, that microdamage is the necessary precursor for growth, but it requires serious respect.
So consistency and pacing your recovery are key.
Absolutely.
Well, when looking to safely explore these kinds of metabolic adaptations, a wireless pad-based system like the muscle stimulator, enhanced with EMS technology from ORIEMS DOT Fitton, aids in delivering this localized stimulus comfortably. It's reported to be a highly effective way to replicate these specific laboratory conditions at home.
Having a controlled, consistent delivery of that stimulus is vital when you are dealing with metabolic shifts that cause that level of microtrauma.
So what does this all mean? It means you now have the ability to biologically hack the recruitment order of your own muscle fibers. You are bringing the heavy artillery to a light skirmish.
I love that phrasing. You are bypassing the central governor entirely. But what's equally fascinating is how the endocrine system fails to react to this heavy artillery.
Wait, if the muscles are basically grounding in acid and leaking creatine kinase, I'd expect the body's alarm bells to be ringing constantly. Did they look at stress hormones?
They did. They specifically measured saliva cortisol levels.
The body's primary stress hormone.
Right. When you put the body under severe systemic stress, the brain sounds the alarm and cortisol spikes. They took saliva samples before the rides, immediately after, and 30 minutes into recovery.
And considering the CK spiked by 3,000 units, the cortisol response must have been off the charts.
That is the logical assumption. But the data showed something entirely different.
Ooh.
Even though the muscles were pushed into deep fatigue, the saliva cortisol increased normally from the exercise, but it was completely unaffected by the addition of the stimulation.
Wait, really? The 85 hertz ride didn't produce any more systemic stress hormone than the baseline ride?
There was no statistically significant difference. The body didn't perceive the electrical current as a traumatic systemic stressor.
It just registered the normal, moderate cardiovascular effort.
Exactly. The intense muscle fatigue remained a purely localized event.
It really is like a cheat code. That balance of deep work without spiking systemic stress is exactly why a muscle stimulator enhanced with EMS technology from ORIEMS DOT 50 supports targeted training so beautifully.
It allows for a highly targeted application of physiological stress, which brings us full circle to your premise.
The three questions from the beginning. First, how can reaching exhaustion faster actually be a massive training victory?
Exhausting faster here is a victory because the muscles hit their absolute maximum metabolic threshold earlier.
So the drop from 29.2 minutes down to 26.7 minutes wasn't a failure.
Not at all. It is an acceleration of the local training effect, maximum adaptation in less time.
And the second question, why did their muscles scream while their heart rates barely noticed?
Because the targeted stimulation triggered the fast twitch fibers locally, overriding Henneman's size principle.
It bypassed the need for max cardiovascular output to wake them up.
Exactly.
And finally, the third question. What does this mean for you, the listener?
It means you have a completely new tool in your arsenal to break through plateaus. Decoupling the heart from the muscle opens up a new frontier in how we program physical training.
It fundamentally changes how you view a tough climb. If we can decouple cardiovascular fatigue from muscular fatigue, what other physical limits are we artificially placing on ourselves? Think about that next time you hop on the saddle.
It's definitely something to consider.
If you love understanding real research without the fluff, this is your space. Please follow our podcast, leave a review, and join our Facebook page at Health Research Digest. For more details, the latest and most important research papers, simplifying blog posts, and direct links to all original studies, visit our website at ORIEMS DOT 50.